What's up, YouTubians? Gary, VWJawbreaker. Welcome back to part 2 of the 1968 cc stroker build. That's right, we're back on it today. We've got part 1 done, which was the mock-up and assembly of the short block. Short block sitting there, ready to go. Now it's time to do the long block. We need to go ahead and get the jugs and pistons set. Heads done. We need to do rocker arm geometry. We need to modify the heads a little bit from the way they were ran before. Compression ratio, all that fun stuff. So without further ado, let's dive in, get crack-a-lackin', and let's get this project on the road. Sooner we get this done, sooner we can break the cam in and fire this bad boy up. I'm looking forward to hearing this puppy run. So there we have the short block all buttoned up again. Again, this is a 74 by 92 thick wall 92s. So here's the thick wall 92s. We got some cylinder shims, so we need to go ahead and check deck height. We've got our cylinder studs, rockers, our Panchito heads, 044 Panchito heads from CB Performance, but we need to remove the dual valve springs for single HD springs. We got our push rod tubes. We got a lot of stuff to get done today. So without further ado, let's jump in, get crack-a-lackin', and let's make this thing happen. All right, in order to figure out your compression ratio, you need to do a couple different things. Step 1 is go ahead and put a spark plug in your hole. Get yourself one of these CC kits. Drop your doohickey in. Fill this up with water or whatever fluid you want to use, and figure out how many cc's, how many milliliters this combustion chamber holds. And that's step 1 of figuring out your compression ratio. These I've measured at 62 cc's. There are other videos of me showing how to do this. I'll link it down below. Next step, we need to go ahead and take our cylinder, drop it on with our shims, and double check our deck height. Deck height is how far down does the piston sit into the cylinder. We need a minimum 40, so there's no possibility of piston to valve clearance and whatnot. And you don't want the piston too far down, because then you'll have the combustion in the cylinder and not the head. So let's go ahead and drop this on there real quick for mock-up. Take our shims, and we'll go from there. These shims are actually, we need approximately 40 thousandths, so hopefully I measured that right. I went ahead and pre-ordered these. We've actually got a 30 and a 10, and those together should be 40. Sometimes they're not. You need to check them to verify. But believe it or not, we're actually sitting right about 42. So that's good. Let's mock it up and see what we got. Now first, before we mock up, we need to go ahead and put our head studs in. Now these do not need to be like torqued into the case. You just want them snugged. And if you notice, let's see if I can do this. See how you can see the light through some of those? Those are not blind case savers. So you can actually see all the way through. So we actually need to put a little bit of sealant on these. You can use a little bit of aviation sealant if you like. That way it seals the threads. Some people like to use some kind of Loctite or something like that. I don't like using Loctite on them, so we'll use a little aviation sealant, paint that on there, run them down in. Bada bing, bada boom. Now we want to take our cylinder, rock it back and forth till we find exactly top dead center. And we want to go ahead and measure, and that's 40. We're a little loose. Let's go ahead and jump it up. You can also use a caliper if you like. I just seem to get a lot better result doing it this way. So that's a 30 and a 12. So that would be 42. Slightly. Let's go to, jump to 14 maybe. There we go. That's exactly it. So we have 14 thousandths, or sorry, that'd be 44,000. So let's go ahead and figure out exactly where we're at. Now on CB Performance's website, AA Performance also has one. Engine bore we know is a 92 millimeter. We know our crank is a 74. Now our deck height is 0.042, right? No, 44. Combustion cc's we know are 62 cc's. We're going to solve for compression ratio. We're at 8.1. This W110 camshaft wants a tad more than that, but I'd rather keep it a little low since we're not sure if this is going in as panel bus or not. So it's got a split window bus. It may go in that. I was hoping for 8.2, but that's all right. 8.1 is close enough. Now, if you wanted to, you could take out your deck height, right? Because you know what your head cc's are. Remove your compression ratio and say, hey, you know what? I want a compression ratio of 8.2. Hit to solve your deck height, and it says we need 0.37. So we need 37 thousandths of deck in order to get an 8.2. Now, unfortunately, it's not quite possible because you want a minimum of 40. So we're at 8.1. Close enough for government work. Now make sure when you check your deck height, right? We just checked it on cylinder 4 here, cylinder 3, that you flip it over and check the other side. You want to verify that both sides are the same or as close as possible. Sometimes a case has been decked improperly where they come through and kind of machine this side to get rid of this lip or something, and therefore, you know, you could have one side quite a bit more than the other. It's rare, but it's possible. So always double check that. Check everything. This is engine building, not engine assembling, right? Verify everything. So I'll go ahead and do that off camera, and then we're gonna go ahead and jump on over and start prepping our cylinders and our pistons. Yeah, they're not ready to go out of the box. We need to verify ring gap and clean these things. So we have our cylinders marked, we have our heads marked, so we know exactly what cylinder goes where. So what we need to do now is we need to go ahead and remove our rings to verify our ring gap. So I like to use these little doohickeys here. Makes it a little easier because, well, it sucks breaking a ring. Ask me how I know. Here we go. Take top one off. Take the middle one off. Now, I like to leave the oil control ring on for this because what you want to do, put your ring into the cylinder. And then I use the oil control ring because that's as far down as we can go to square it up and make sure that we are square. Now what we want to do is actually measure that gap right there. We want anywhere between 10 and 16 thousandths is what I usually run for. So we'll start off with 10 and see where we're at. Just kind of run that in there. All right, so that's actually right at 15 thousandths. So that one's actually good. So we're gonna pull this one out. Put our next one in and do the same process. We'll measure this one. All right, that one's good. It's the first time I've actually had them come out right. One thing else you can do is with all your rings off, everything off, you can actually weigh your pistons in grams. And if you need to, take a little bit of material off here, sand a little bit down here, and actually get these within about a half a gram of one another. Just little FYI. Same thing with your rods. You can actually kind of home balance your rods, if you will. So now that those are done, we'll go ahead and do the same thing with our oil control ring. And then we'll go ahead and clean all this up really well, lube it up, clean the cylinders, because I guarantee you those are not going to be clean from machining stuff and the junk they put in there. Oil it up lightly, and then she'll be about ready for assembly. And it's going to do that 3 more times. Oh, and something else real quick. Since this is cylinder 4, we have the rings for that one done. I'm actually going to mark the arrow that goes towards the flywheel so it's a little easier to see. And I'll mark this one number 4. Now we're good. Now that you've got everything cleaned up, that rag was clean. That was the first pass with a little brake cleaner on the inside of the cylinder. Yeah, so we're gonna do a little looby with some motor oil Gonna keep everything nice and clean, lubed up. Do the same thing on our ring pack here, just to make sure. Doesn't take a whole lot. Just work that around real well. Now with our setting our rings back in, you actually want to clock them. So there's your arrow point towards the flywheel. So this is going to be up. So you actually want the split and your oil control ring to be top. I like to put this ring right around 1, 2 o'clock, this ring right around 9, 10 o'clock. So you never want anything towards the bottom side because, well, that's the bottom of your cylinder. You don't want to smoke, right? Stagger your compression rings so you don't lose compression. Now it's just a matter of taking your ring compressor. I still use this one. This one's not the right size for this one, but my other one broke, so I don't feel like using the ratcheting one. That one drives me nuts. And I just start. Yep, felt it stop. We didn't have them fully compressed. Double check our rings. May have to use that other one. This one's for 85.5s and these are 92s, so sometimes I can get it to work. There we go. Now all we need to do is just tap it down until you start to see the wrist pinhole. And that's it. This one is prepped and ready to go. Let's go ahead and knock out the other 3 and we'll be done. Another thing you want to do is you want to take your cylinder before you fully assemble it and lap it into the head with some lapping compound. That just ensures that you get a nice smooth sealing surface and everything's nice and flat all the way around. Because remember, these don't run head gaskets, and that's another reason why you mark cylinder 1, 2, 2, yada yada yada. So now we need to go ahead and move on to removing these dual springs and put in single springs. We don't need dual springs for Engle 110 camshaft. So all we need to do there they go. All right, finally got that off there. Those single grooves were really on there. We're going to take our keeper off the top, our retainer. Now with these particular high revs, it really doesn't matter which is top, which is bottom. Check our valve. Valve actually feels really good. No play, slides nice, excellent. Reassemble. And I got the fan on the whole time. Sorry, it's hot. All right, keepers are in. There we go. That one is done. Now to move on to the next one. All right, one head down, one head to go. No, it's not fun using this style, but I like it better than the bench one. Plus I had that, so why not use it? But there we go, we got all of our springs installed. Now we just need to clean up the heads. Verified all the valves and guides are good. So let's go ahead and clean them up a tad, but these have already been cleaned up on the inside. Ben did a nice job smoothing those ports out, man. Whew, this thing's gonna run so nice. All right, head number 2. Heads are done. Now we need to go ahead and start prepping our cylinders. We've got cylinder 1 and 2 sitting here. Make sure your sealing surface here on the case and all of your shims are clean of any oils, debris, anything of that nature. Now we're going to take our sealant of choice, use what you like. I like a little bit of RTV, ultra black. We're going to do a thin layer all the way around. Doesn't take much. Go ahead and put our first shim down. Make sure that your grooves line up for your cylinders because they are slightly off. There we go. Same thing. Very thin layer again. And then take your second shim. Same thing. Make sure your grooves are lined up properly. And then one last coat. Now that that's done, we want to go ahead and install our wrist pin. And if you notice, we've got our flat side, so we want to go and install our C-clip on the inside and install our wrist pin from the other side. Take your wrist pin, your C-clip, there's a sharp side that goes out. There we go, wrist pin is in, and if you notice, you can actually turn it. It's in the groove. So now what we'll do is go ahead and oil up our wrist pin, slide it in just a little bit, and that one's ready to assemble. Now we can go ahead and put our C-clip on this side, wrist pin clip, and it rotates. We're good. Now we've made sure our arrows are pointing towards the flywheel, everything's clocked. Now comes the fun part of the, don't forget these, air deflectors. It can kind of be fun on this side because of the case hardware. Now we can take our cylinder 1 head, drop it on. Now with your pushrod tubes, you have a seam that faces up towards the head. These are a windage tube, so if you notice, it's got more sticking out on one end than the other. Those go down in the case. I also like to take like a 13 millimeter, stick it in the end, and kind of expand it ever so slightly. Again, something I do, you do you. I like to run just a little bit of sealant on the inside of the washers. Only inside the head, not on the outside. So that's the initial torque. Now I'll go ahead and go up to final torque. Well, one side down, one side to go. Everything went well. Everything's just snug because of these big chromoly 10 millimeter head studs that, you know, this case takes. So everything's definitely a little snugger, trying to get the cylinders on and the heads on. Nothing wrong with that. That's just the way it is with 10 mil over 8 mil head studs. All right, time to get 3/4 side done. Let's do it. All right, we got our solid rockers built. Basically, you're just gonna sit there and take the shims that come in the kit. I like to kind of spread them out. These are around 15,000, so those are around 27. Got some 57s and a couple 59s. So I like to kind of organize them so I can kind of see. But once you put this on there, you don't want much more than a thou or two play. You don't want much. So those are nice side to side. And we went ahead and put our, this is a little angle iron piece I use for my dial indicator. So we went ahead and put that on there. We go ahead and get our half lift, and well, camera angle sucks, but yeah, we're about there. Now, because these have the dreaded swivel feet, I don't like them. You know, these little flat spot, little ball bearing thing on the end keeps you from having to use lash caps. The kit does come with a bunch of different spacers for underneath the rocker stands. This is one of the reasons you got to do rocker arm geometry. Now, in our situation with 40 thousandths deck, we're able to use stock length chromoly push rods, and I've got 4 shims underneath each pedestal, and that gets us exactly where we need to be. Now, if you notice, that nut is a little bit different looking. That nut is actually a head stud nut, 8mm head stud nut, so the outside is actually a 15, not a 13. Do not use the little nylock washers that come in the kit. These are very soft, and if you're running high RPM, high lift, things like that, they will strip out. So I like to use the head stud nuts, extra security. So also, when you do your rocker shaft assemblies, you want to make sure, these things not even sitting flat, I hate these. You don't want this dead center. You want it slightly offset, and that's to help keep your valves rotating when they move. So as you see here, you don't want them too far offside, you don't want them dead straight, you want them just slightly off center. That helps the valve rotate a little bit every time that the valve opens and closes. So again, these are stock length chromoly push rods. These are the bug pack, or as they say, bug pack. So we're looking good. I think we just need to go ahead and keep buttoning it up, keep pushing along. Now, one thing you want to make sure you do with your chromoly push rods is you want to flush those out with brake clean and compressed air. And to set your valves, you don't use a feeler gauge. You want to make sure that you can just spin that push rod around. That's how you know you got it right. So you don't hear any clatter, but I can just spin that push rod around. So we'll go ahead and do the same on this one. And this side will be about done, minus one thing I like to do, soak it down with some oil, just to help make sure that everything is kind of pre-lubed a tad. That's probably a bit much, but that's all right. And then we'll just go ahead and spin it over a few times, make sure everything's good. Well, that's pretty much it for this weekend. Quite a bit done. looking good. Now, you know, a lot of people ask me, Gary, why do you not put in the distributor drive gear when the case is still split? I don't, because I don't like the distributor hanging there when I'm working on the 3/4 side. It's one more thing to accidentally bump. Not to mention, with the distributor drive gear tool, it's real easy just to drop the thing down in there and you're done. So that's just kind of the way I prefer to do it. So we're missing a socket for the gland nut. His is bigger than 36mm, but it's a nice chromoly one, so pick up a socket for that. Don't know what happened to mine. Then we can set end play, oil pressure switch, fuel pump. Then we can go ahead and put all the tins on, which we could probably go ahead and do now, but I don't feel like it today. Let's see. Intakes and carbs he has. And we'll be about ready to fire it up. So next video, we should be firing this bad boy up. So stay tuned for that. Well, guys, I appreciate you being here. Thanks so much for sticking around. And again, this is not a how-to exactly on this video. If you want more in-depth stuff, check out the playlist. I'll say it again. So thanks so much for being here. Thanks for sticking around. We'll catch you on the next one. Till then, be kind to one another and be good.